This just in. Former President Donald Trump says he has been indicted over his handling of classified documents. Trump posted on social media Thursday that he has been ordered to appear at a federal courthouse in Miami next Tuesday. He has denied any wrongdoing in the case. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins me now. Well, Scott, what could Trump know about an indictment against him that isn't public yet?
Well, let's make clear what he has posted, John. You encapsulated it well, but Donald Trump on his Truth Social platform has said he has a 3 p.m. Tuesday court appearance at the courthouse in Miami. That is the Southern District of Florida. That is the same U.S. court district in which you would find Mar-a-Lago. There are about 8 or 9 magistrate judges in that courthouse by last count. He would likely be facing one of them for what could be an initial appearance in a criminal case. He says the case is seemingly, in his words, seemingly about the boxes. He calls it the boxes hoax, which would be potentially a rather vague reference, or some would characterize it as a crude reference to the classified documents investigation and that search that was executed August 8th, 2022. And there's a parallel already, John. You'll recall in August 2022, we learned of that search by federal agents of Mar-a-Lago because Donald Trump posted about it, either as it was happening or just after it happened. Here we are again, Donald Trump trying to control his own narrative, control the cycle of news, and is saying he's been told, his attorneys have been told, he is to appear Tuesday afternoon in federal court in Miami.
And the appearance in federal court in Miami, do we think that means there's been CBS has been reporting that there's a grand jury meeting in Miami and Washington, and there's been a good deal of discussion about where this would take place, where the judge would sit. Would it be in Miami where the documents were found, or Washington where some of the alleged crimes might have taken place, and that was a decision to be made? Does this ensure or suggest that the action's now going to be down in Miami, in Florida?
It raises that possibility, if not that likelihood. There are significant issues in jurisdiction here. If this is, in fact, about classified records, about possible conspiracies, about possible obstruction of the investigation into those classified records, well, those classified records were in Florida, in the Southern District of Florida, though they may have supposed to be in the District of Columbia or somewhere nearby the federal government's possession. But there's so many important distinctions as to where you bring a case that go beyond just the jurisdiction of the alleged crime. The juries are different in Florida, demographically, potentially in their political backdrop, in their political nature, than they are in the District of Columbia. We always underscore this point when we report on the January 6 cases, but juries in D.C. have handed down at least partial convictions in 100% of the January 6 cases. And oh, by the way, there have been many that have gone to trial. In the Southern District of Florida, the former president might find a more hospitable jury. It's a step ahead of where we are right now. He's the one announcing he has a 3 p.m. Tuesday court appearance. Just like he did last year, he is announcing this himself to the world rather than allowing law enforcement or the Justice Department to do so.
And the purposes of that, as you suggested earlier, is that you control the narrative, to use an overused word, about how this is rolling out. And there's been no official word as far as we've heard so far, and we'll update everybody as soon as we get official word. But with no official word, this then means he gets the first crack at this. So just to clear this up, does this mean that this doesn't mean anything for the January 6th investigation that this special counsel is also looking into? This is because Jack Smith, the special counsel, is dealing both with the documents question and also Donald Trump's role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The two are not connected in this moment.
We've spoken with any number of legal analysts who've said it's not mutually exclusive. You can have two separate cases brought. You can have a special counsel bring presumably charges in different jurisdictions. It doesn't rule out the prospect of anything happening in the District of Columbia or something specifically happening over January 6th in their investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. All that we know so far is coming from the former president, who is not an unbiased party in this case. He's saying this is about, in his words, the boxes or the classified records. But we know this grand jury has spoken to key figures who'd be part of an investigation into efforts to overturn the election as well. And those efforts presumably could involve the District of Columbia.
And this would be, if in fact this were an indictment of former President Trump, this would be the first federal indictment of a former president. We had discussed, and remind me again, Scott, the theories in terms of where this would take place and the judges. Some legal analysts have said that the reason you would want to bring the case in Washington, D.C. is that the judges there are more familiar with the kinds of issues at hand, the Espionage Act, which is one of those that might be at play here. Also just obstruction in the case of handling sensitive documents, that Washington judges just understand that more easily, and that might not be the case in Florida. But you were making the point earlier that there could be some complexities with the judge pool in Washington because of those other January 6 cases, which have come before many of those judges.
That's right. I mean, there are virtues and downsides to picking a venue. In the District of Columbia, you have a very healthy set, a large set of judges, 22 federal judges in that courthouse, many of whom, if not all of whom, have some experience in national security issues because they're judges in the nation's capital. The Southern District of Florida is no small courthouse. It also has a rather large and healthy group of judges. But because we're in uncharted waters here, it's worth raising a couple issues. First of all, no matter which venue this goes to, there are judges who were appointed by Donald Trump. And as we mentioned earlier this hour, and we'll be talking about a lot in the future, judges are randomly selected by a random selection machine in these courthouses. They're not picked strategically. They're not picked by prosecutors or defense attorneys. They are picked by a computer, John, randomly. So we have the prospect of a judge who may have been appointed by Donald Trump handling a case involving Donald Trump. We're a step ahead, though, where we are right now. He's saying there's an appearance Tuesday at 3 p.m. That would almost certainly be an initial appearance before a magistrate judge. Magistrate judges don't oversee the totality of a case, just the initial hearings and initial motions.
And we also should note, of course, there's an ongoing criminal case in New York against President Trump, which is a whole other kettle of fish.
And that's a local prosecution. But let me tell you a couple parallels that are worth noting just moving forward. Just like in New York City, in that local prosecution of Donald Trump, a federal court prosecution of Donald Trump happens invisibly to the public, broadly speaking. There are no cameras in the courtroom. There are no live audio feeds. You cannot watch this on television during the daytime hours. It happens in a place where only pens and paper are allowed, and reporters and the public, and a finite amount of those at best. It happens, though, in a public space, where if Donald Trump were to be brought into a federal courthouse, there would need to be some number of security protocols to ensure his safe arrival. I was there in Manhattan when he made the appearance before Alvin Bragg's prosecution before the local judge in New York. And to say there were security protocols is a broad understatement. There were blocks of the city that were shuttered. There was fencing erected. Similar measures would most certainly be taken Tuesday in Miami if, in fact, the former president is accurate that he is to appear there for a court appearance. One
of the reasons that we reported earlier this week that some of the former president's lawyers met at the Department of Justice to discuss prosecutorial misconduct. We've heard from his legal team that that's going to be something they're going to talk about. He's also got former President Trump allies on Capitol Hill. Have you heard anything along those lines as a kind of pre-rebuttal to the coming indictment from your beat covering Capitol Hill? Scott, I'm going to have to thank you. We're going to take CBS. We're going to now go to a special report. Thank you, Scott.